Hey, thanks for watching my video on understanding field formatter managed display settings in Drupal 8. This is a companion to the GitHub repo archive video player, which is a simple module that modifies a text field to play a video from archive.org based on the video ID. I also use Drush 9 to generate a lot of the code we're going to see, and I just wanted to show that in action as well. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and see what this module actually does. So here we are. I have an article that I've made, and I've added a field called archive video, and there is the ID of a video. And here you can see I've added the field in, and it's a plain text field, but the module lets me make an archive video player. And you can see I have some settings here preset, and I can autoplay on or off, and I'll just turn autoplay on, hit update, save my configuration, go back, refresh my video, and now I have a video about bananas that is playing from Video Archive. Okay, the rest of this video is going to look at the code and how we got here. So a couple quick notes. I am in my favorite IDE, Visual Studio Code. I'm also using Docksal, the bash-based Docker management tool that I use for my local environments. Docksal has a command fin, which I can invoke other tools like Drush. And I'll just show you, I'm on Drush version 9, which is what introduced this generate. If you're used to Drupal console, you're going to be very familiar with this. So Drush generate, and it should show me a list of all of the things it could generate. I'll jump up to the top. See, I got some globals, some modules I can generate, plugins, services. But what I'm actually going to focus on are module standard and plugin field formatter. That's what I actually use. So let me just run a quick module generate just to show you this in action. And it's going to ask me a few things like a module name. I'm going to say example 1, and it automatically generates the machine name. Just write a little description, doesn't really matter. Custom, I'm going to say text field just because that's how I made the example code. But I didn't create an installer. I didn't create a libraries YAML. I didn't create permissions YAML. I didn't create an event subscriber or a block plugin or a controller or a settings form. But it could create all of that stuff for me. Oh, it looks like I already had one there. So I'm just going to kill that real quick. That's not the point of this video. I might make another video just to explore Drush generate, but I thought it was worth at least noting. Anyway, let's jump to the code of what I actually created. So I did note in the code what was generated by Drush generate, except for my info.yaml. This was all auto-generated just from what I put in. My module file, everything down to line 11 was auto-generated. And you can see here I have defined out a hook theme that is going to pull in an archive video player theme and load some variables that we're going to load from our formatter. And here is that template on my twig file. So I just copied the code from archive.org and just put my twig variables in there. All right, but the real star of the show and what we came to see is the archive video player formatter.php file, which is a plugin for a field and a field formatter. So it does need to be structured like this for our namespace to make sense up at the top. Drush generate made all of this for me down to line 23. So everything above that auto-generated. So my namespace is going to be correct. My inheritance is going to be correct, so I can use these functions and extend the right things. And my names match as it should be. And it provided 4 skeleton parts. It provided a default settings. It provided a settings form. It provided settings summary. And it provided a view elements. So I'm going to go ahead and close down my folder structure because you should see how all of this is built. And I'm going to close my terminal as well because we're not going to need it for the rest of this. So view elements is the one that absolutely needs to be there to modify the screen. And here we have a return element, and here they are properties, the same name that is defined over in module and in our twig file. Okay, so we're not getting into the logic of this part too much. There's other things you can watch on the internet on view elements. We're going to look at the 3 other parts of this: the settings summary, the settings form, and the default settings. These are three things. Two are interdependent on each other working, and the third relies on the first two being there if it's going to work as well. Let's start with the one that we just need to build, and that's default settings. So default settings, anytime we have something with settings defined, as we do here, we need to go ahead and preset those settings somewhere. And in this code, we're going to do that under default settings. So that's why I've just made this 560, 480. I guess I should have made this the other way around. So change that to 516, 480. And autoplay, if it's 1, according to our twig file, autoplay is going to be enabled, and if it's 0, then it's not going to play. Okay, so that's default settings. This is mandatory. The rest of this will not work if default settings is not there. View element will always work regardless if we have this or not, but the settings pieces will not. So next up is the actual settings form. So settings form is where we define, well, this form where we can set the video height with an autoplay. And you can see the name of my elements, the same as defined in module and twig and our default settings above. And there's just two text fields and a checkbox, and that's exactly what we see on the screen here, text fields and checkboxes. And we're gonna pre-fill in whatever the default or whatever the value is from our current settings. So same way we actually pulled them down in view element. And then the last piece here is setting summary. So setting summary is optional. We don't need it. You can see things like body and links don't even have options. But if we do want it to show up here on our admin view so we don't have to dig through the menus, then we do absolutely have to have the other two defined. So all the three pieces are needed. Setting summary is optional. We don't need it. But if we're going to have a form that saves any kind of variables, then we are in fact going to need default settings for those variables. And if these two aren't set, default settings and our settings form aren't built correctly, then setting summary is never going to be able to get any of our values correctly. So that's the three-part dance to getting forms to work. You can dig through the code, change variables around, and this should all work. Let me know if you need any help out there. Always feel free to reach out. And thanks again for watching this video.